In this video, I'm going to tell you what I wish I knew over 25 years ago when I was first diagnosed with Meniere's disease. This is what the doctors don't tell you because they just don't know. If you are new here, welcome. And if you are not new here, welcome back. I am Allie, chronic illness and inflammation since 1998, which is when I was first diagnosed with Meniere's disease. I was 23 years old. For the last almost 2 years, I have been on a healing path of figuring out what works for me. There's been a lot of learning, and I'll be honest, it's the complete opposite of what we've been taught and what our doctors tell us to do for treatment for the last 60 years. And I don't believe that doctors are out there trying to, harm people or keep this information. I think it's just so foreign and outside of what they've been taught how to treat chronic illness. If you're watching this video, you are probably where I was about 10 years ago. I had a surgical labyrinthectomy after doing all of the treatments that I was always told and following all the guidelines for 16 years. I presented with Meniere's disease in 1998. Like I said, I was 23 years old, and they told me, okay, you need to take diuretics, change your diet, limit caffeine, limit alcohol, low salt diet, no processed food. I followed all those rules. I got into the system and I did all of the treatment paths because my Meniere's disease never went away. Nothing worked. I had a shunt. I did a chemical labyrinthectomy with gentamicin injections. I did a total of 10 injections and they didn't work. Finally, I was desperate, hopeless. I felt helpless and I felt like my life was just going by. I couldn't participate in my life. I'm sure you have experienced what I was experiencing if you're watching this video. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I can't even imagine where I would be 10 years later if I had not had the surgery, the most invasive surgical intervention you can have. They drilled out my inner ear after the chemical labyrinthectomy didn't work. I just felt so desperate. I'm sure you've experienced this. It was like I was watching my life go by and I couldn't be an active participant in it because I was debilitated and, dealing with crippling vertigo and brain fog and migraines and anxiety and depression. And I felt like I was locked inside my body because I knew exactly what was going on, but I had to be laying in my bed as still as possible, just barely closing my eyes, because if you close your eyes too much, that makes the spins worse. And I was so desperate and I was so dejected and I felt so defeated and I was full of shame and guilt because nobody could understand what I was dealing with. Okay, not crying. And those memories are painful to reflect on. I remember laying in bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I could hear barely because, my hearing was in the tank. I couldn't hear very well anymore. And I also have tinnitus and, the ringing and the noise and the fullness in my ear, but I could hear, families outside playing with their kids. And meanwhile, my husband had to travel for work because we needed to replace my income because I got laid off twice. And I was just not very reliable at work. I was on intermittent medical leave because it could happen at any time. I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. You've probably experienced that. And and I couldn't take care of my kids well, and I couldn't spend time with them. I had to have help raising them while my husband was 3,000 miles away working. My mental health suffered. It was the lowest point of my life. And I was just such a victim to what I was going through. And I thought, there's no one to help me. No one understands. And it was very isolating. It was tough. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. This was 16 years after my diagnosis. And I searched on the internet. I found a specialist. And 3 months later, I had a labyrinthectomy. While I do not regret my choice or my decision to have that labyrinthectomy, I would avoid that at all costs if I could. I would want to know if there are other options. And I'm here to tell you there are. This is how I continue to keep my Meniere's disease in remission so that it doesn't go into my good ear, because I literally have no options if that happens. I have done all the treatments and all of the ways to mitigate the vertigo. I no longer have any hearing at all in my left ear. I have no balance system in my left ear. 10 years after my labyrinthectomy, I have no one to ask a few issues that I'm dealing with. I feel like my ear hole, I don't know what the medical term is, but I feel like it's shrinking. There's a void of bone, of structure inside my skull. And, you know, as you age, that changes. It's been compromised. So, but I don't know of anyone to ask. I haven't seen my specialist since my post-op visit. So I'm here to tell you there are other ways you can do it. And this is what I do to keep my Meniere's in remission, if you will, because I still have Meniere's disease. And there is still a percentage, it's about 10% is what the specialist told me in 2014, that I will develop it in my other ear. And so I have to do certain things to keep my inflammation as low as possible. I like to tell my experience and my story because I'm an expert on me, and you can become an expert on you. My experience be your cautionary tale, because I'm an expert. I am not a medical expert. I'm not giving you medical advice. I am a woman that has dealt with this my entire adult life and still deal with this, and went on to develop more autoimmune chronic illness. And all of that was rooted in my body's inability to mitigate inflammation, to deal with the inflammation that I was causing it. I didn't know that because I was following the experts and the medical advice. I went against all of that medical advice, and I know it sounds scary, but if you are desperate, this is an option, and I highly suggest trying it. And the medical experts just don't realize they're taught to treat symptoms, not search for the root cause. So if you are in a state of crisis, specifically with Meniere's disease, and being in the terrible, crippling cycle of anxiety, vertigo, the brain fog, migraines, you know, being out of commission for hours, days sometimes, and just in that trap, I'm going to let you know hope abounds. I'm going to tell you exactly what you can do that worked for me, and you can do your own research. I'm not giving you a medical advice. I want to show you something. You can't read it, but it says, I'm not qualified to diagnose you, but I have some theories. Hang on. You can start some of these things immediately after watching this video. You can start researching, you can watch other videos. I'm going to link other videos below about what I'm talking about so that you can refer to those. You can look up some of this stuff on your own. It's actually shockingly simple, and with effort, it's attainable. The treatments for Meniere's disease, from the time I was diagnosed in 1998, the treatment path is exactly the same. It is exactly the same today as it was in 2014. That's 10 years ago. And it is diuretics, it is, you know, medication, dietary changes, and the recommendation is to lower your salt. For me, I know that the low salt diet recommendation is for the birds. I eat more salt now than I ever have. I eat only beef, butter, bacon, eggs. It keeps my inflammation as low as possible. It's also known as the carnivore diet. It's also known as, you know, a plant-free ketogenic diet, because at its basis, it's a ketogenic diet. I do not eat carbs. I am zero carb. But there are a lot of different levels. It's a spectrum, and I highly recommend you do some research on salt. I will link videos to Dr. Berry if you want to hear it from a doctor. Here's a book. It's called The Salt Fix. This was published in 2017. In my case, in my body, salt does not cause hypertension. I do not have high blood pressure. Do these things to mitigate your inflammation. One is a diuretic. I took a diuretic and it did not ever mitigate. Nothing helped my vertigo. Not the Valium, not the diuretic, not following the dietary changes, not, you know, having the shunt, none of these things. And the treatment's exactly the same. So if you are finding yourself like, oh, do I need to try the chemical labyrinthectomy, which is the injections into the ear? Well, what is causing your inflammation? You know, it's based in your metabolic health. You can search on the internet, what do I need to find out? You need to know, are you insulin resistant? I eat 5 things: beef, butter, bacon, eggs, salt. And I intake a lot of salt. And I have never had problems with inflammation since doing that. I don't know anyone that has reduced their symptoms of Meniere's by following the medical advice. And I have looked. I have looked for other anecdotal, because I like to have anecdotal history. I want to hear anecdotal stories. I want to hear about the person that had lived with Meniere's for 10 years and this is what they figured out to help them. And I want to try that. Or here's, you know, in my case, I lived with it for 16 years. I developed 3 more inflammatory issues, chronic illnesses, and I want to know what that person did, not someone that sees 25 patients a day that are dealing with these issues that are all interrelated, and they just put them on, you know, they just tell them to do the same thing. That is just keeping them in the system. And I'm not saying that doctors do this malignantly. You know, I don't think they're trying to harm people by any means. I think this is the way you do it, and it's a rigged system. What I'm telling you worked for me is the carnivore diet. I started the carnivore diet after I had a reaction to something I ate, and I was trying to lose weight. In the 7 months after I had my labyrinthectomy, I gained probably 45 pounds very, very quickly. You know, my life was completely altered. I'd been laid off and I did not go back to work, and I had to figure out a new way. And I turned to, you know, emotional eating, and I struggled, and I gained a considerable amount of weight. And so then by 2023, like I said, I had dealt with other illnesses that were inflammation. And because I was never addressing the root cause of what was happening in my body. So I had a reaction to something I ate, and I was dealing with uveitis, and it freaked me out. And I found an elimination diet called the Lion Diet, which I did for 2 weeks. I am suggesting you try an experiment. I am just telling you what worked for me and what has helped a lot of people mitigate their inflammation, keep it as low as possible. I have to do that. My life depends on it. My hearing, my brain function, my vestibular system depends on it. So I have to keep my inflammation as low as possible. I never eat carbs, and I eat as much salt as I want. I put salt in my coffee, and I have 2 cups a day. I salt all my food, and I have not had any problems with the concerns of the mainstream medical establishment. If you're desperate and at the point where like you'll try anything, I would suggest trying this for 90 days. Heck, you could do it between your visits with your specialist. Go in there and you're like, you know, okay, I'll see you in 3 months. Or you can't get in for another 3 months, and you're the one that's at home, and you're the one that's suffering and missing time with your family and not able to live your life. Maybe you're having trouble working like I was, can't drive, you know, all of these things. Try this. I noticed within the first 10 days of eating, you know, carnivore diet, the Lion Diet, my inflammation was the first thing that reduced. I couldn't believe it. Like, I could feel it. I could see, you know, my clothes fit better within 10 days. So I could tell my wrists were, you know, they were always puffy. You know, I'm not telling you not to take your medicine. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm telling you this is what I would do if I was suffering with crippling, debilitating vertigo and Meniere's the way I was 10 years ago. If I had known this, I would have done it. I want you to be able to make an informed choice from someone that has been through it. You know, if you choose to do any kind of treatments, you should know, you should have all of the information. And this is what helped me tremendously. When your doctor tells you, okay, you've got to take this pill forever, well, you make a commitment and you don't blink. I did not blink an eye. So I was doing steroids, I was doing diuretics, I was doing Valium, I was trying meclizine, nothing helped. And thank God I did not get addicted to Valium, because I have a very addictive personality. So I thank God for that. You can definitely make the commitment to yourself What do you have to lose? You could lose, Meniere's. You could kick it to the curb. I think that's powerful. And at the least, oh, I could try this. It's, it did not harm me in any way. I have tons of videos of what I've been doing and what I've been experiencing for the last 20 months. I started my YouTube channel and really putting out content about how life-changing this way of eating has been in, I think it was April of 2023, after I'd been doing it for 3 months. I couldn't believe all of these things were connected, and that the root cause of all of insulin resistance and inflammation. And when I was in my 20s, I was healthy. I was thin. I did not have trouble with weight. It wasn't like, you wouldn't look at me and think I was, sick. I'm an all or nothing person. Maybe you're like that too. So I just dove right in. But there are other options. Maybe you're not suffering in like a really bad cycle and you just need some help and you're just looking into this. So I do a no carb carnivore diet, but the spectrum is wide, and maybe just ketogenic would be beneficial to you. For sure, I believe a ketogenic diet would be, beneficial, and just increasing protein, fat, and, however you want to do it. There's all types of information out there. And then I would also suggest specifically looking at videos from Autumn Bates on intermittent fasting, because there's something that helped me tremendously when I was starting out, was just intermittent fasting. Learning about that, there's something about the fasting state and the ketogenic diet that is related to inflammation in your brain, in your body. I would certainly dive into that. I noticed specifically with the benefits of salt were to help me to stay hydrated, to help with headaches. It's helped other people in my family as well. Just adding a pinch of salt under my tongue if I was having a really bad sugar craving, or if I felt like I had a headache. I don't get headaches anymore. I have been a person that has suffered from migraines since puberty, and I don't get headaches. I get headaches very rarely, and I don't think I've had a migraine for 2 years. That's incredible, because that migraine you get when you're having a Meniere's attack, and there's nothing you can do except sleep it off, right? So, and then you can't close your eyes because you're too dizzy, so you have to kind of halfway close your eyes, and then until you get so sleepy and fade, just fade off. Your brain needs rest to recuperate and deal with what's happening. So salt really helped, and I did not have the experience of it increasing inflammation. It did the opposite. I learned that on my own. That was against medical advice. I understand and appreciate it's very scary and daunting to go against medical advice. I am a rule follower, and I tried it. I tried everything until I was desperate and there was no hope. I felt like there was no hope. All these health issues, I'm relatively young. What am I going to do now? And you know what? I figured it out. Another thing that I heard just recently last weekend from Dr. Berry is you do not need anyone's permission to eat the food that you want to eat. You do not need your doctor's permission to, only eat 5 things for 90 days between visits. They don't live your life. They don't experience what you experience. They're not the ones missing out on their life, okay? You can try this and do your own research and see if it works for you. You don't have to even go into it. Just say, I'm eating a whole foods diet. I have not had pushback from anybody, but you know what? I've never seen my specialist again. I had a post-op visit and that's it. They don't call you. It's not personal. They just have 25 other people that they've got to manage their medications. And if you're improving, you don't ever have to go back to your doctor. You can find other healthcare providers. You can join Dr. Berry's Proper Human Diet community. He's a doctor. He's a family physician. So I want you to lean into the fact that you are not dependent, don't have to be dependent on the doctors. You don't have to go in, if you see improvement and what you're doing is improving yourself, they don't know more than you. You know more than they do about your experience. You are the expert. So really what I want you to take away from this video is Coming from someone that has been where you are, very low, very depressed, very, feeling defeated, hope abounds. Let this message show you that you have the power to change your life, and you can do it simply. I'm not saying it's easy, but it can be done. You can watch some more of my videos. I've been trying to comment on people's videos that have Meniere's disease and say, hey, maybe try this. Maybe try this before you have a life-altering surgery. Again, because I don't regret my choice, but I could have made it, it's nice to know if you have all of the information so you can make a more informed choice. You can immediately start implementing these actions. You can immediately watch more of my videos. You can research more, look into the salt fix, look into, Big Fat Surprise is a book by Nina Teicholz. Dr. Berry is a resource if you need there's tons and tons of information. If you want to know about the link between salt and hypertension, high blood pressure, Dr. Berry has about 5 videos just on that. Put in Carnivore Diet, Dr. Berry, salt, and you can listen to that. And he is a doctor. So I'm not giving you specific medical advice, but I'm telling you, you could immediately start learning about it and go have some bacon and eggs. Bacon and eggs any time of day. I'm down for it. I've got my eggs. So if you want to hear more about some of the things that I do, you can watch some of the videos. I'll put a playlist up if you are specifically looking for carnivore, or if you want to see all of the other benefits I have, the other things that I have healed, there'll be a video here. Take care. Hope abounds. You can do it. Thanks for watching.